Hola chicos, en este video vamos a trabajar con los verbos ER y R. So this video is going to round out our verb experience for the present tense. We've already hit up the AR verbs and now we're adding ER and IR verbs. So we'll be able to accomplish our learning target. I can use AR, ER, and IR verbs to communicate in the present tense. So we're doing pretty well. This is covering all of our regular verbs. There will be all sorts of goofy, irregular ones that we'll come across later, but we'll worry about that when we get there. So the great thing about learning to conjugate ER and IR verbs is that you use the same steps as we did with the AR verb. And so if you remember, step 1, that's right, you have to take off the ending. So when you ask yourself, what's the ending? It's always the AR, the ER, or the IR. Nothing more, nothing less. That's the ending, okay? So we're using these examples of comer and vivir. Comer is to eat, vivir is to live. So here I have the ER and the IR, so I'm going to cross those out. I'm going to take that ending off. And then I'll be left with the stem, com and vi. The next thing I need to do, just like with our AR verbs, is I need to identify or have clear in my head, maybe I'm the person talking or writing, who's verbing, who's performing the action. I can't very well conjugate a verb if I don't know who I'm talking about, right? So you need to make sure to identify who's verbing. How do you know who's verbing? More than likely, it's going to come from one of these pronouns that we've talked about. But if it's down here, it could be a person's name. It could be like mi amigo or la profesora, or here it could be my mother and I, right? Because anyone plus me is we. So be careful with that, but typically it's going to be a pronoun. Once I've identified who's verbing, I need to place them there. So for today's sample, we're going to look at yo and tú, okay? And once I've got those, you got it. The third step, just add the correct ending. So how do I know what the correct ending is? We've already learned AR endings. So now you're learning ER and IR endings. And ER and IR endings are, you'll notice, pretty simple. They're very similar, and we'll look at that in a minute. So for yo, I'm going to go over here and add the O, because that's, yo is always on the top left. So it's yo como. And for tú, I'm going to go down to this box. That's where the tú lives, the second one on the left. It's going to be tú vives. Yo como, tú vives. I eat, you live. The ER and IR endings are really similar. The only difference we might see is right here, nosotros and vosotros. That's the only real difference. So you kind of have half the work to do. It's kind of like a BOGO, okay? Now you'll also notice that they're really similar to AR endings in the present tense. So yo always ends in O, and that's kind of a steadfast pattern. You'll notice that tú always has some sort of S in it. Nosotros always has some sort of mos. Vosotros is always a trickster. It's always often got a lot of vowels and a tilde hidden in there somewhere. Okay, so that one you just have to get used to. Ellos and ellas almost always ends in an N. And you'll notice that él and ella or usted usually just ends in a vowel. A or A in this case. Okay, so those are kind of some patterns we can see. So once we've gotten those 3 steps down, if you're ready to practice, go ahead and move on. If you're not ready to practice, watch this video once more and take some notes, okay? If you're ready to practice, here we go. So we've got our endings here for reference. And when we work on these sentences, we're going to follow those 3 steps. So let's look with tú beber café. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is take off that ER ending. It's out of here. I'm going to identify who's verbing. In this case, it's given to me, tú. And I'm going to look over here. The correct ending for tú is es. So I can come up with tú bebes café. It's really important to say bebes as opposed to bebés, which we talked about why that's important in class, okay? So here we have mi amiga leer un libro. Leer is a really tricky verb. It's got 2 E's back to back. You need to pronounce both of them. So the infinitive is pronounced leer. And when it's conjugated, you also need to pronounce both of them. So I'm going to eliminate just the last ER because that's the ending, ER, nothing more, nothing less. I'm going to look at who's verbing. In this case, it's mi amiga. Well, I know if I went back to my pronouns, I could replace mi amiga with ella, right? So I'm going to be working down here. So mi amiga, I'm going to go up to my ER endings, lee. Mi amiga lee un libro. And that's it. So this is going to look goofy to us, and we're going to want to pronounce it lee, but we're not going to. We're going to say lee. Okay? Lee. So go ahead and continue practicing. I recommend pausing the video until you've gotten all 3 of them done. Okay? So now that you've finished all 3 and you've paused, unpause me. Mi compañero y yo. This time we're going to go with vivimos. Because anytime you see this y yo, that's a trigger that we're talking about nosotros, right? Anyone plus me is we. So then we have los alumnos toman and el mesero lleva. The reason I threw in these AR verbs together with the other ones was just to remind us that just because we're switching from AR, ER, and IR doesn't mean we're doing anything different. We're just looking at different endings. That's all. We're not really learning any new strategies or steps. This is the only thing we have to worry about for now. So we want to make sure we don't forget the old stuff, okay? So if you need further practice, I recommend just grabbing some verbs from your vocab sheet, slapping a few pronouns on there, and seeing what you can come up with, okay? Good luck, and I'll see you next time. Bye!